Good afternoon, everybody. Hi, if you're here, you can hear me. Just say hello in the chat so I know that you're here because, well, you might know that we actually, from the presenter's view, we cannot really see who is watching. We just know the number. Hi, Jocelyn. Hi, Lakshmi. Hi, Hui Ting. So nice to see you here. Hi, Damien. Jasmine. Thanks for taking time. I know you have your assessment coming up early next week. Thank you for joining us. Hi, Mrs. Chan. Well, today is the 8th session of Life, Love, and Lipidemia. This is a session where I share my thoughts, I share my ideas. Typically, I will invite a guest in, and what I try to do is I try to ask them questions, understand their thoughts, understand their processes, so that we can pick up the best practices, model some of these practices, and eventually become better professionals ourselves. Well, this could apply to any field that you work in. In our case, it just happens to be healthcare. Every fourth session, as I reflect on my career in healthcare and as I reflect on the ideas that were shared by the different guests, I come alone and I share my thoughts and how we can apply all those things in healthcare. So welcome to today's session. And today's session is really about the experiences that I've had and why I think that it is so important for us to be able to develop the courage to be empathetic and why that's important. Well, the truth is this. When we try to be empathetic, it is not always reciprocated. And that applies to any service line that you're in. It's not just healthcare. Sometimes, as a person who is working in a restaurant, you work so hard to rush through an order for somebody just because they say they are rushing for time. And they just grab the stuff and they move away after that really quickly. They don't thank you, they don't do anything. And that becomes really, really challenging because when you don't feel some sort of reciprocation, even though it is the simplest thank you, it makes it very difficult for you to keep doing what you are doing. So today I want to discuss some of these thoughts, some of these ideas. Well, firstly, do we really need courage to be empathetic? And also some of the times when things go well and when things don't go well. All right, so let's have a chat and let's see how all these things come into play. All right, so firstly, let's talk a little bit about courage. It is not so easy to demonstrate empathy, especially when it comes to our field in healthcare. Why is that so? Because in healthcare, we are largely trained to fix a problem. So in my role as a pharmacist, patient comes to me, tells me they have a problem. I ask them questions, find out what the issue is, give them the medicine, job done. That's my job, to fix a problem. But over the years, I've thought very carefully about why do some of my pharmacy friends have a slightly, in fact, sometimes a very different experience from what I have. I mean, I have so many customers or patients who would come back and seek my opinion, seek my help, whether my recommendation works or didn't work for them. And when I have that kind of patient coming back, it really gives me a sense of fulfillment, a sense of trust, because why would they come back if your recommendation didn't work? There must have been something that clicked, and that's why they decided to come back and speak to you again, because they trust you. And it comes down to this particular point. I've realized that throughout my career, when a person comes and tells me what their symptom actually is, the problem is seldom the symptom. The real issue is the impact of that particular symptom on the patient's life. And how do we understand what is the impact to them? That's where it takes a bit of empathy to understand these concepts. However, it is not that simple because some people perceive being empathetic as being weak, as being soft. Well, if you want to be empathetic and at least to take a walk in the person's shoes to see where they are coming from, you have to be willing to be a bit vulnerable, to be willing to soften a little bit, to step into their shoes, to feel together with them and understand where they are coming from. Let me give you an example. Just about 3 hours ago, I was speaking to a lady. She is 82 years old. Right? She's been cursing and swearing and being very, very angry because of a medical condition. And rightly so. She suffers from lupus and she has to take prednisolone because that helps to manage the condition. Now, the issue is not really the dose of prednisolone. Her issue was never about how many tablets she has to take. She knows perfectly well how many mg, how many tablets to take, when she has to take it. The real issue comes when she takes the medicine and she starts to get a bit bloated, because that's the effect of higher doses of steroids. So she was never ever concerned about the instructions. But why she did not really want to take the medicine is because she was afraid of how others would perceive her. Now, think about it as a healthcare professional. If you were in the position speaking to this lady, it is very easy to come across and say, just take the medicine. What's the issue? You want to get well, right? You want to get well, you just take your medicine. Yet, if we just spend a little bit more time to ask one or two more questions, the underlying reason of why she does not want to take the medicine is because she's worried that she doesn't look good. You can say she's vain, and by the way, she acknowledges it. But it becomes even tougher when we don't address that particular issue of her image in front of everyone. And what's the result of that if we don't handle that issue of the image? She doesn't feel good taking her medicine. She doesn't enjoy it. She doesn't want to do it. And sometimes, for all you know, she might skip doses. She doesn't even believe in the therapy. What I did was I spent a fair bit of time speaking to her and assuring her that it's normal because a lot of people actually face the same thing. And at the end of the day, when she gets better and when the condition is managed better, she will come out and she will look just like how she was previously. The only thing is, at this point in time, she has to tide through this initial phase where she has to continue taking her medicine to do well. And she said, yeah, how you know so much? And I'm like, yeah, because I study pharmacy. That's why I know. But here's the underlying point. The way that you come across to somebody, that little bit more effort to try to understand the underlying issues from the person can make a very big difference in therapy. I mean, as a pharmacist, you can very easily think of your role as to follow the instructions, make sure patients know how to take it. But I've always seen my role as a pharmacist not just to tell them the instructions, but to inspire them to be compliant with the therapy. Now, when you think of your job as how can I inspire my patient to be compliant with their therapy, then the way that you come across, the things that you say to the patient, it's no longer about instructions. Because if the patient is motivated to comply with the therapy, if he or she is inspired to comply with the therapy, the instructions are easy. They will remember it. They will do what it takes to remember it. And more importantly, it can be sustained. Right now, it isn't always all nice and all rosy, because what seems like a very smooth encounter actually came from a lot of preparation. And this leads to an idea that one of our previous guests, Jackie, in episode 6, so this is episode 8, in episode 6 and episode 7, as a professional MC, a big part of him being able to deliver almost every single time to an audience is all about the preparation. You see, I remember there was once where I was in the midst of conducting my smoking cessation classes. So some of you might know that a big part of my work is we used to go to the schools, and when we were at the schools, we would speak to young kids who were caught smoking, and we would try to guide them along, share some thoughts, share some ideas. Of course, everybody wants them to quit smoking, but it doesn't happen just like that. So there was this once where I went to this school. There was this kid who, we do group coaching, right, or group counseling. He was in the same group as his girlfriend, right? So his girlfriend was also caught smoking. So one of the questions I asked him was this: how did you even decide to pick up smoking? How did it start at all? What triggers your desire to want to light up a cigarette? And he says, every time I feel angry, I want to hit the wall. I said, okay. And after I hit the wall, if still not good, then I will take a cigarette and then I will smoke. This is a 15-year-old kid. And of course, as we know, that age is not legal. So I said, okay, so how has it been for you every time you hit the wall and you punch the wall? Then he's like, hey, Jer, you see my hand? And from under the table, it came up, wow, it was actually in a cast. So I was like, wow, okay. And every time he argues with his girlfriend, he gets angry, same thing happens. So I said, okay, now let's try something, right? Just if, I could find a way to help you to relieve that anger, relieve that frustration, relieve that desire to want to unleash a lot of pent-up emotions, while at the same time helping you to protect your hand from being fractured. Does it sound like a good idea? And he said, yeah. Now, okay. So I went back and I called my friend. So his name is Adi. He runs a sports shop. And I said, Adi, I have this kid I'm trying to help, and I want to see if I can get him a punching bag. When I got him a punching bag, I want him to, through that punching bag, release his anger so that he doesn't smoke so much. Then Adi, being very kind, he said, okay, let me call my supplier and see. Right? And what we were trying to do is to get a better price because the kid was actually financially challenged. So eventually Adi came back and he said, yeah, can. And he told me the price. I bought the punching bag. And the next session, when I went back into the school, I was carrying that big punching bag on my shoulder, and I climbed up 3 freaking flights of stairs all the way into the room. And when I opened the door and I went inside the room, he looked at me and I was like, "Wow, Zhe, you legit eh?" I was like, yeah. Right. And you can tell that the smile on his face was, it's like he was so happy and he wanted to cry, but he cannot cry out because tough guy cannot malu. And he started to use his non-fractured hand. He started to punch it, and he was so happy. He was holding it. At the end of the session, he was carrying it on his shoulder, parading it around the school canteen, and finally he went back. Now, the next session when we came back was really the start of the entire smoking cessation journey. Because that is the time when rapport was built. That is the time where he started to trust me. And that was the time where he started to realize that In his own words, I'm legit. And that's because I really care. And that's because I demonstrate that I care. So let's look back on this particular incident. It takes guts to do something like that. And you know what was the most challenging thing that was in my mind? I asked myself, what if I did all of that and it didn't work? What if I did all of that and he started to see me as, wow, this Joe weak. Like that also he will do. I just say, then he will do. And all that was genuinely possible. But I still did it. And I told myself that in whatever way I can, I have to be able to build the rapport with the kid. So based on that incident, well, it also made me realize one extra thing, which is to be a good smoking cessation counselor, healthcare and medical technical knowledge, it's never the most critical. The most important trait that a smoking cessation counselor must have is the ability to build rapport with the kids. And number two, the courage to be able to feel empathetic, even though they might lose out. And it's true that sometimes I have lost out on my own. When I was a third-year pharmacist, so sometimes in the retail pharmacy, we work different shifts, right? That day I happened to work in the evening shift. So around 9:45, 10 o'clock, the shutter comes down and all my staff go. But me being me, I would stay back, try to clear the admin, try to think of how I can make the store better, because I treated the store like my own business and I really, really wanted it to do well. At about 10:15, this gentleman came in and he was knocking on the shutter. I typically don't answer because I was told that, hey, if people knock on the shutter, don't go and entertain. If not, you got to serve them. But I was like, if he was really so frantic and he kept knocking on the shutter, maybe it was something urgent. So I raised the shutter and I went out. And I said, sir, what can I do for you? They said, are you still open? I said, well, it's pretty obvious that we are closed. What do you need? And he says, I need to buy medicine for my mom, who is in India. I was like, what medicine is it? And he actually named me, it's a hypertension medicine. I said, sir, you do know you need a prescription for that? He says, oh, I need a prescription. Can you just give it to me? I said, sir, are you asking me to break the law? Then he said, no. I said, but you need it very urgently because you need to rush and post it. He says, yes. I said, okay, where is the prescription? And he says, the prescription is actually in my office, which is in Raffles Place. I was based in Toa Payoh at that time. And at that point, I started to ask myself, should I wait or should I not wait? And truth to be told, I really didn't want to wait because firstly, it's after working hours. Secondly, there was no guarantee on whether he would come back and whether I would be able to help him. When he eventually came back, when he eventually said, okay, I will go and grab it, he left and I said, okay, sir, I will wait for you. 10:45, he still didn't show up. I called him, no answer. 11 o'clock, still no reply, still no answer. And I was waiting and waiting and waiting. And I really wanted to go back. But I kept thinking from his perspective, what if he really, really needed it so urgently? After that, came 11:15. Still no reply. I was like, walao, don't do this to me. Finally, after calling nonstop at 11:20, he finally picked up the phone. And he said, Oh, I couldn't find the prescription. So anyway, I thought you left already. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, seriously. And it was at that point I found it most difficult because, well, I felt very hurt and I felt more disappointed than anything because I really wanted the best for the patient. But I was treated in this way. And she said, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I appreciate that. And it still didn't feel very good. On the train back, I was staying in Yishun, so it was from Toa Payoh to Yishun. I was thinking about the entire incident, wanting to curse, wanting to swear, and ask, it's at times like this that you tend to ask yourself, is it worth it at all? Why bother putting in so much effort to help people when they don't reciprocate? And that was tough. That was tough. But very quickly, another thought came to mind, and I tend to be, perhaps I took a step back and I started to realize that my mindset was shifting more from trying to understand the patient to it's me against you. I don't like you. Now we are against each other. So because of this incident, I'm never going to do it again for anyone else. And I find that if I carry on doing something like that, it's going to be extremely painful to carry on my job as a pharmacist and to be able to develop empathy. About 2 months later, the gentleman came back and he's like, Mr. Sean. I was like, hi, do you remember me? I was like, no, I don't. And that's because every day we see so many patients, so many customers, right? So I really cannot remember him. He's like, I just want to thank you that day for waiting for me. And today I have a prescription. So we processed it, did a parcel sale, and we got the medicine to his mom. But more interestingly, in the weeks after that, he came back so many times asking for other conditions, for health, for his kids' health, for his wife's health. And that's where I started to realize, hey, why would he still come back? Well, that's because he believed in me. Is that because he trusted me? I don't know. But what I do know is because of that incident, as a demonstration of my sincerity and really trying to help him, he knew that I was not going to scam him. He knew that I was always going to do my best for him, no matter what the incident is. And he became a super loyal customer, a super loyal patient for the next 2-3 years, as long as I was working full-time at the pharmacy. So the main point I learned from this entire incident is this. Sometimes it takes a lot of courage to be empathetic, especially when things don't go well. But courage is not always the rah-rah, the shouting loud, the roaring kind of courage. But courage sometimes very quietly means to just take hold of yourself and come back the next day saying, I will try again. And because I was able to, perhaps by chance during then, come back the next day and tell myself, I will try again, I will give it another shot. I wasn't just able to build a longer term relationship with this particular patient, but it allowed me to carry on my work for all the other patients who I saw, even when I did not know if he would ever return to the pharmacy. So when I think of these two incidents, it brings to my mind one of the key points that Flex from our 5th episode. So he always defines empathy as asking himself, what is the best possible interpretation of this person? And when I think of it that way, I find it easier to feel for my patients, and whether or not there is reciprocation, it all builds up to a belief that there is a potential for a relationship so that he can be better, grow better, and be healthier. In my case, in smoking cessation, it's a belief that he can change. It's a belief that the kid could make a difference in his own life. And that's where the courage of being empathetic helps me to see someone for not who they are, but for what they can be. And when you try to see someone, anyone, for what they can be, you realize that there's a lot of potential and there is a lot of hope. And there's a lot for you as a professional to work towards, to help them get there and to walk along that entire journey to get there. So I would like to end this session by talking about the underlying principle of all of this. And this is something that Jackie, who's the professional MC, he shared as one of the most critical things in being able to be confident and build his own confidence when he has a professional encounter with his guests, with his events, which is, it is very important to ask yourself, what is your purpose? Right? I mean, I think sometimes it's very easy to ask yourself the why are you doing things? Well, not everyone knows the why, like what drives them, what motivates them. But if you think of your purpose, what is your role there? You can easily say that your role is to dispense medicines, or if you think of your role as inspiring, like if I thought of my role as inspiring everyone to better care for themselves and doing whatever it takes to help them get there, it brings a new meaning to your role. It guides your actions, it guides your thoughts, and it guides the way you carry yourself as a professional. So for everyone who's here and still listening, I invite you to think about that. I invite you to think about, what does empathy mean to you? What are you willing to do to be more empathetic? And more importantly, how are you going to cope and how are you going to handle a situation where you gave it your best, but you have no idea whether it will be reciprocated or not? And I believe that if we can figure all of these things out, if we can ask ourselves what we can do to better serve the people whom we serve, we start to see them for not what they are or not who they are, but who they can be. And with that, I would say thank you so much for joining me. I'm so happy that this is our 8th session, which means we've been doing this for 2 months, every Sunday at 3 o'clock. All right, so next week I have another guest who's coming on. I'll tell you who she is. It's a very interesting topic. But thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you so much for being here for the last 8 weeks, supporting me and listening to me and listening to my guests. So I wish you a very, very nice, very, very happy weekend or whatever is left of the weekend. And bye bye. Take care.